So in a very back to school autumn type theme, we're doing the entire session focused on very practical tools and resource demonstrations. So it's going to be a little bit of a different session today, but hopefully really useful and practical focused. So to kick us off, I'm really happy to welcome Alison and Alex from RCJ Advice, who are going to be showing a new element of their CourtNav system, which also hosts the Flows platform that we featured previously. So over to you, Alison and Alex, to introduce us to SupportNav.
Hi, morning everyone. Alison is here today, but I think it's going to be me guiding you through because she's lost her voice a little bit, so I'm here go through it for you. So yeah, my name's Alex. I'm from obviously RCJ Advice, and today I'm just going to quickly guide you through and show you a new tool that we've created, which is SupportNav. I'm sure you're probably aware of other tools that we've got. We have CourtNav, and also we host Flows as well, which is our dedicated domestic abuse services. And through our work with Flows and CourtNav, we have developed now our new service, which is SupportNav. SupportNav is an online platform. People can access it through going online, or they can access it through CourtNav. And what it is looking at areas of law that may affect a survivor of domestic abuse. And you know, issues such as immigration, we have housing issues on there, issues that if somebody's experiencing domestic abuse, it might be something they have to think about for the first time, don't know where to start, where to go, and what course of action to take. And so we created SupportNav, looking at it from a domestic abuse angle, legal issues, how they might differ if domestic abuse is involved. So getting straight to the information somebody needs, dependent on their own situation. And so the way this came about was that we noticed through our work on CourtNav, which is our online platform to help people to apply for non-molestation orders and occupation orders, was that every month we have about 1,800 people create accounts for CourtNav, and of that, about 1,200 might go on to actually submit their application. So every month there could be around 600 people, say, that have decided to make a CourtNav application or create an account, but then not go on to actually submit or do anything with that. And obviously we know as professionals that it can be numerous incidents of domestic abuse until somebody decides that they want to take action, or maybe, you know, go and seek some support and decide what they can actually do. And so we didn't want to lose that 600 people, those people that have decided at one point they're going to make a change, maybe apply for an order, and then one way or another, because of the, you know, the nature of domestic abuse, they've decided against it. And so we thought, well, there's a group of people there who are looking maybe to get some help but don't know what to do with that. And so that's how we created SupportNav. We want to make sure that people at that moment have the options or information available to them so that they know their options at a time that they're ready to then go on and make an application or make a change with what they're experiencing. So we wanted to create this specific tool, which is SupportNav. So I'm just going to share my screen with you so I can just show you SupportNav. I will do that now. Okay, I hope that's shared all right with everyone. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so it really is legal advice and information designed to help people. I'm just going to close this up here. Designed to help people who are experiencing domestic abuse. So the way we came about this information and how we decided what was going to be on here is that through our Flows line, we have a Flows line which people call Monday to Friday 9 to 5, and there behind that we have our legal team. So it was survivors contacting us, and so we kept information about, or compiled a list of the most commonly asked questions and areas of law that they were concerned about, and that's how we started to create SupportNav. So we were dealing with the issues that survivors we know what they want help with and what they want support with, and so we've made it as easy to understand as possible. So these kind of headlines here are the most commonly asked areas of law that people need support around. So, for example, we know that the most commonly accessed page is the I'm in danger now. So we give information here and support about what people need to do, obviously contacting the police and the support that they need. But we know that when people are using CourtNav, we have that side of things covered. So actually this I need advice section here goes through all the different areas that somebody might need support on that we know people regularly contact us about. So we can signpost people here from our flows line directly. If they contact us and they say they need help around children, for example, we will get people on here so they can read some information about what it is. So we've done it from as if the survivor was accessing the page. So, my child is in danger. What happens to my children if I leave my partner? But we also know that actually this is a really handy tool for frontline professionals. When I go and meet with organisations and I tell them about all the tools that we have on offer, this is a tool that helps guide professionals through information that helps them to let survivors know the directions they need to be going in, what kind of applications they need to be looking at. But really important to us that if then somebody decides that they need to take action and make an application, that we get them to that legal support. If somebody's experiencing domestic abuse, when they're making applications on children or non-moles, then they should be able to get legal aid. And we want to link people back in with professionals. And when there's areas of law that we know organisations do really, really well, we want to signpost people back to them so that we know that they're getting to organisations that are specialists in that area, that they're getting the support and guidance that they need. So as I said, people can access it directly, or we also have it quite heavily within our CourtNav account. So for example, we know that one of the most frequently used pages was actually the protection from harassment page, which actually makes sense for us because a lot of people go onto CourtNav thinking that they will be able to get an order through it for a neighbour or a work colleague or somebody else that's harassing them that's not an associated person. And we want to make sure that those people get support as well, because although a non-mole wouldn't be appropriate at that point, they might want to get advice about protection from harassment. And so we let people know how to get to that as well. I'm just going to go to the next page. So we have had this open for a few months now. We've had some really positive feedback from specifically actually frontline professionals who are using it to help guide, to understand what they need to do to be able to help the people that they are already supporting, especially if these are areas that they're not there supporting them in. So for example, some systems advisors have said to me, if somebody's gone in for benefits advice or welfare benefits advice, and it's been disclosed that that person's experiencing domestic abuse, they'll actually use support now to help them decide where they can then signpost people to, what support that they might need. And then we use it heavily as well for the ongoing support for people that we're supporting, if they need advice around other areas, and we can show them how to use it and where they can get ongoing support as well. We know that people access this most at the moment through CourtNav. We're looking at how we can get it out there more, how we can get more people using it, because it does have a lot of support on here for people as well. It really, if you click on it, it will take them to the pages that they need. Again, as I said, we're really happy to signpost out to other organisations to make sure people are aware of all the support that they have, because we know that there are so many organisations out there, and it's very much what Flows of CourtNav is about, is that collaborative working, about getting people to the support that they need when they most need it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Oh, wrong one. So that is Support Now. It's an online platform. It's got lots of advice on there. If you have a chance to have a look at it, please do. We'll send around the links and you can have a look at all the different advice that's on there for people. And we're using it really in conjunction with our CourtNav services, our Flow services, to give a more rounded service of support and a package for people that we offer, obviously, with Rights of Women as well. So I think I have everything there in the 15 minutes, but if there's any questions, let me know.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Alex. It's amazing to see kind of CourtNav develop into this kind of a holistic tool. And it's interesting because it picks up on so many different aspects and initiatives that we've talked about here previously, signposting, but also a little bit of triage and how you involve those frontline advisors in that process to get to the specialist advice at the end. So
exactly, and that's something that we're going to develop along the way with it, is that this is the start of it, and actually once we understand how people are using it, we can guide people to the answers that they need, got a guided triage, so that people are getting, because often people, especially if they're experiencing domestic abuse, don't know the support they need at that point, don't know where they need to go and what needs to happen. And often there is a very strategic journey to get the support they need at the right time. And so that's the hope for it, that we're able to get to that point.
Absolutely. Just a quick question from Julie here. How long did it take you to develop this platform? Who did it for you, and how much does it cost?
Okay, so we have a really close working relationship. Our developers on CourtNav and all of our RCJ websites, I think, is an organisation, a company called Electric Putty. They're based in Brighton. They are fabulous. They do all of our technical work for us, and it's, we work very closely with them about what we want and what we do. It was quite, I would say it took a few months for us to gather the kind of information off the lines, to kind of grow a picture of what we needed on there, what was people asking us. But we're very fortunate that we have our flows line, and so we have survivors contacting us every day, and we're able to grow on that. I'm gonna say, and Alison, you might have to correct me here, was it about 8 to 12 months to in all to get it all going? But it was a process because of that learning thing. I think that probably took the most, and getting that content. We worked with Rita, and I would get the legal content down and write it in a very legal way, and then we worked with content organisations who then went on to reword it so that it was user friendly and so people could understand it. And as for costs, I do not know, unfortunately. That is something that Alison might be able to help with.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure.
I think the main difference for us was we used a copywriter with support now, because we are so busy at Flows. It would have taken 5 years to do this, I think. And also, I think we really benefited from somebody who knew nothing about the subject coming at it anew. In terms of cost, I would say it was in the region of 25 to 30,000 because of that copywriter.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. And I think it's just worth featuring here. I think that this is built on top of kind of the CourtNav platform and on top of the Flows program. So this isn't even a standalone kind of initiative. Obviously, it's a new part of this project, but that I know has been in development for coming up 4 years now, something like that. So just interesting to kind of highlight that, I suppose. I'm going to move us on. Please do ask any other questions in the chat, and maybe Alex and Alison will be able to answer there. For the time being, I'm going to call up Mary Marvel from Law for Life and Advice Now, who is going to be running us through another development of an existing resource that they've been working in partnership on. Over to you, Mary.
Hiya, thank you. Yeah, so I wanted to show you our newest tool, which helps people write a submission for the tribunal on work capability assessment appeals. So yeah, the first thing to say is that we created this in partnership with University House. It's our first project together. When it was originally conceived, they had conceived it as aimed at advisors and volunteers to help people develop their skills in writing tribunal submissions, to build their confidence, and to make things much faster. Obviously, once we got on board, a very large chunk of Advice Now users are people having to represent themselves or just with the help of family or friends. So we worked together to design it to make it work for both audiences. it works in a very similar way and looks very similar to our other tools, our mandatory reconsideration request tools. If you don't know those, please do go and have a look at them on our help with benefit problems page. All our tools now, you have to log in first to use them. That enables you to stop and save or at any moment as you go through, which is obviously incredibly important for many of our disabled clients or clients with impairment or illness or their carers. Part of the way that everything is designed is that everything you need, every explanation or bit of help is in the tool when you need it. We don't expect you to have carefully read everything before you start. So first of all, obviously explain how it's going to work, and it can help with any kind of reason that the claim was closed, you know, didn't send the questionnaire back in time, didn't attend the assessment, or more commonly was assessed but found not to meet the requirements. We then explain everything that the client needs to know to use this tool. So my guy maybe just has mental health issues. So you go through and you select the descriptors that that you think you meet. It has an explanation of substantial risk and everything you need to know about that. If you need a bit of a more detail, there's a link out, but it explains, I think, what most clients need to know. And then it shows you what group it thinks you should have been put into, and helps you then complete submission. So it's really quick. If you're an advisor or a representative or appointee, put their name in there, and then this tribunal submission looks like it's came from them. If you've done it yourself, you leave it blank. Obviously, you stick in an email address because it's emailed to you at the end. You choose which benefit it was that you were assessed under. You have to put the dates in of the assessment and the decision, but it does explain where you would find those on your big bundle. So if you have been put in the lower group and you should have been put in the support group, you just tick there, and it adds the argument that needs to the submission. You just explain the conditions that you have and the symptoms. At any point, you can go and look what other people have said and use their examples. You include any medication that you're on. Here it explains how to highlight the medical evidence that you want the tribunal to put above the assessor's report. So, you know, you might say, please see the letter from my consultant. Here you tick if you're sending further, you know, new medical evidence, and here you tick if the decision maker actually had all the evidence, as very commonly happens, chose to ignore it, or to prioritize other evidence. Then you have to explain how you think you meet those descriptors. Again, there's examples for everything. And once you've done that, there's the substantial risk if you selected that, and again, some examples of what might count as substantial risk and how you might want to express that. And then you get to the end and it explains what you would do with it, how you upload it to the Manage Your Appeal service, and gives you more details if you don't know how to do that, or how to print it out, and explains where you'll be able to access a printer if you don't have access. And then you tick the box and it slowly creates the submission. At that point, one copy is sent to your email inbox, and then you can download a copy here. I'm just going to show you what it looks like. So there we go, and it's produced a submission just like, you know, frankly, just like I did when I was a benefits advisor, explaining all the arguments, and, you know, professional level that people can do, well, advisors can do very quickly, and obviously claimants less quickly, but fairly easily. We're very proud of it. We're about to launch it next week.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, Mary. And again, lovely to see another development of kind of some of Advice Now's existing tools as well. I know the mandatory reconsideration letter has been widely hailed as really, really useful. So great to see another development along those lines. I'm going to move us on, but I think there are maybe some questions or suggestions in the chat, if you wouldn't mind having a look at those, and to all members, please do feel free to ask in there as well. We now have a new tool that's been launched in the sector, so I'm really excited to have Amar and Anthony here to talk through the Find Others tool and give us a quick demonstration. I will just, there we go, we should be ready to go.
Thanks, Marta. Hi, everyone. I'm co-founder of Find Others. We started this project a couple of years ago now. We received funding from the SRA. I believe Warren's actually on the line. So that helped us get the project off the ground. We've been through quite a few changes since the Legal Access Challenge. But the purpose of our platform is to allow individuals to group together, find others that have experienced the same issue as them in order to rise up against those that have abused their rights. It can be a consumer problem, can be employment issues, medical problems. Think of it as David versus Goliath. We level the playing field in order for those that have suffered the injustice to shine a light on the problem and try and resolve their issue as a collective. Spreads the cost, spreads the burden, and makes the task much more achievable. We've had our first few successes on the platform. They haven't reached the legal stage simply because they've grouped together. The perpetrator has listened and the media listened, and they didn't spend a single penny on legal fees. We do offer legal tools as well in order for lawyers to manage group actions more efficiently, to reduce the cost of seeking justice. And we're just looking to spread the word, partner with various organizations to signpost Find Others. We're getting a lot of cases from law firms that are turning down clients. Those clients might have a valid case, but they don't have the means to take on that case. They say, bring it to Find Others, build your case, find others that have experienced the same issue, and then the law firm takes on the case if the problem hasn't been resolved by grouping together. But we'll give you a short demo of the platform, and please feel free to ask any questions.
Fantastic. Hi, my name is Anthony. Typical Zoom introduction. Can everyone see my screen?
Can, yes, thanks.
Excellent. Okay, great. So essentially what happens with Find Others is when people come to the platform, the first thing we want them to do is engage with us and tell us about their issue. So what is the issue that you're facing? And you can either search for that issue to see whether anybody else has brought action to the platform surrounding that issue. Or of course, you can create your own action. So we can put you through a brief form. You can spin up a campaign in a matter of minutes and start raising awareness around that particular problem. But if you were to search, obviously we give you some guidance on what you can search for. So you can search for different topics like environment issues, residential issues, employment issues, whatever is the topic of the issue that you're facing. You can describe the issue as it's been presented to you. So you can say, my privacy has been breached, my employer has let me go unfairly, my doctor has misdiagnosed me, or you can look for the names of the people that you want to hold accountable. So you can put in the company names or the individual names as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a a campaign that we have live on the system at the moment, because it's a great example of how the system can be used. So sort of building on what Amal was saying, we have a campaign at the moment from a group who was unfortunately affected by the AstraZeneca vaccine. And they are the unfortunate few that have become either severely disabled or have unfortunately died as a result of the vaccine. They have coroner's reports, death certificates to support that. And they've unfortunately, you know, they were largely ignored by the government. The existing compensation scheme that is there specifically for those things, they weren't really following up with that. They weren't responding to them. They weren't listening to them, and they certainly weren't paying them out when they had clear evidence. So they came along and they've put together a campaign on the platform. So let me walk you through what a campaign looks like. So spinning up a campaign, like I say, just takes a matter of minutes. We ask you a few brief questions, and then you can start to populate your campaign. So you can give it a nice, clear title, putting in all those essential keywords that everyone's going to need to be able to get a good summary of what it is and a way to be able to find it. You can put in lead images as well to help explain what's going on. You can see who's brought the campaign to the platform. You can go and look at their profile. You can go and contact them if you want to as well. We can see what a campaign hopes to achieve. So what is their outcome? What are they looking to do by creating a campaign? We can see who the campaign is aimed at. So who is being held accountable for this particular problem as well. And then we can see about this campaign, which is where the campaign can give us some nice, good background detail on why it's here and what's happened so far. But what we can also see under here is the latest from the campaign. So this is where the campaigners can produce supporter updates and keep people abreast of what's going on with the campaign. Here are the latest developments. Here's what we're doing. Here's what's been happening. And that will then notify supporters of the campaign to let them know that there are new pieces of information for them to come and look at. So if we go back up the page, on the right-hand side, we can see we have the press hub. So this is where the campaign can list any press articles that are covering the issue or any developments with the campaign as well. So anywhere it's being covered in the media, you can list those here too. Just above that, we have the social links. So obviously where campaigns have presences online, obviously everyone's got their favorite social media that they prefer to use. So obviously you can list out all the social medias that you're present on. We also give you the ability to post custom links. So if there's further reading or documents or places you want them to visit or other action you want them to take, we can provide you with the means to have custom links, and you can have as many as you need in there as well. We can see that this campaign is attached a petition to the campaign as well. So we have petitioning tools. You can either use our petitioning tools or you can link government petitions into your campaign here as well. We can see that this is a government petition, which has achieved over 100,000 signatures. So that's obviously done very well. And then lastly, on the campaign at the top, we can see ways to support the campaign. So we can see how many people have supported the campaign, what their next target of support is, so helping them to get to that next level of support. And then we have options to be able to support. So I can say, I support this campaign, and I can go ahead and support that if I want to. We get a little bit of fanfare there. And of course, we can also say, I've been affected by this problem. So I can tell the campaign how I've been affected. This is entirely optional. It's down for me to be able to share my story with the campaign, maybe start a conversation if I want to, but this is about me being able to communicate to the campaign how I've personally been affected. And if I want to, I can protect my anonymity at this point, and I can say I want to hide my name and just share my story, or I can tell them who I am and I can update that support. And we can see within this group of 1,000 people, we have 322 affected people in here. Now, one of the great things about this, like Amal said, is that these people have grouped together, shown collective strength, and been able to demonstrate to the government that there is a serious issue here and they are being ignored, and collectively they are now starting to receive payouts. And that's the beginning of their journey to finding justice, which is a fantastic use case for the system, and obviously fantastic for them. Now, if the group decided that they do need to take legal action, they are at that point where they need to take the next step and consult with lawyers, we do have a find a lawyer process that is available. So again, we just put you through a very, very brief series of questions just to establish why you're seeking legal action, what you're hoping to achieve out of it. And then you have a couple of different options. So you can mark your campaign as open to offers from lawyers. So you can say, hi, I'm happy for lawyers to come and talk to us about this issue. You can search for lawyers or law firms. And of course, we automatically present you with any lawyers that on the platform that are acting in your speciality area. So if you have a personal injury issue, we will present you with personal injury lawyers. Now, this is as far as we're aware, the first directory of group action lawyers. So it's an extremely powerful tool for people in this position. And all they have to do is simply click on the profile of the lawyer, have a look at their background, have a look at the firm, decide if they want to start that conversation. And they can start the conversation with as many lawyers as they want to as well. And finally, the last thing that I'll show you is that lawyers can also bring cases to the platform. So as well as the public bringing their issues to the platform, lawyers can bring existing or new cases to the platform. They can produce some powerful imagery. They can have their branding on there. They can tell us what the issue is, who's eligible to take part in it, nice clear ways to be able to join the legal case if you want to, who's the action being taken against, again, that background reading. We give them the ability to show stories from affected people, so people who want to share their story with other people, so it's more relatable, more easy to be able to understand how it's affected others as well. They have common questions, who's working on the case, so you can see who the active lawyers are and reach out to them. And of course, that same updates tool so that they can produce updates around what's happening with the case and keep people abreast of what's going on. And again, they can target those updates, so they can have updates for the public or updates for people that are members of the case. Thank you very much. That's a very brief demonstration of Find Others. I hope you've got some questions for us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Anthony. We've got one question here from Emma, which is about the lawyers. How do you compile this list of lawyers that you have? Where does your directory come from? And is it linked to the Law Society Find a Lawyer tool?
We do link with the SRA Find a Lawyer tool. So if you can't find the lawyer you're looking for, or you need a greater selection, we do use the SRA's API. We don't actually compile the list of lawyers on our platform. It's free for lawyers to sign up and be part of the directory. We so far have about 20 law firms signed up to the directory. I don't know how many lawyers there are, but a number of lawyers within those law firms. So the list is growing, but we just ensure they are who they say they are. They've got the relevant licenses, and they do specialize in the area which they claim to specialize in. And I should mention the platform is completely free of charge. We do not charge campaigners, the general public, to use the platform.
There's a couple of questions here about linking out to other services as well. So obviously you've got the lawyer directory on the site. Does it also include legal aid or a find an advisor link to kind of other types of legal services?
So that's looking, we're looking to grow that out actually. So yeah, absolutely, legal aid organisations, barristers, specialists in certain areas. We're currently working through that and want to partner with various organisations that have experts that want to be listed in the directory. So if there is anyone on the call that is interested in doing that, please reach out.
And also we do encourage, alternative dispute resolution. So if there are other means for you to be able to solve these problems, as we take you through that process to find representation, we do ask you certain questions to establish, have you gone through these processes first? You might want to talk to these groups or these ombudsmen's unions, advisors, etc. And, as Amal said, we'd look to grow that out as much as possible.
I noticed you've got kind of the law firm profile on there. Presumably that's an option as well for kind of frontline advice agencies to have as well if they're experiencing an issue. I know one of the things that we've talked about before is this idea of, finding these group cases or people being affected by an issue wider than one geographical area or one local network. And I know that's something that a couple of people on the call I've talked about with as well, is how do you kind of find this collection of people and how do you tell if a problem is systemic or endemic or whatever it might be. And potentially there's a use here for the Find Others platform to look at some of those issues.
Absolutely. I mean, we want this to be, the forefront of people's minds. If you think other people have been impacted, bring it to the platform, make people aware. And I think a lot of people on the call can use it for that purpose. If you're getting people coming to whether it's citizens' advice with the same issue listed on the platform, it then shines a light on the issue.
Okay, great. There are a couple of questions in the chat which I'll leave for you to pick up. One which I did want to highlight here, that you mentioned you've been part of the SRA's Legal Access Challenge, but how is the project funded now?
So we have backing from various impact investors. We've got funding from various law firms as well. Some major law firms in the UK and Australia have funded the platform. But we always ensure that the social angle is key. We're in this to solve people's problems, and that's the most important thing for us.
And so if you're kind of just thinking more broadly about this group and who might use it, you're definitely interested in investment opportunities that help this community maybe access and utilize the platform. Absolutely. I mean, funding this isn't easy. It's not in the interest. I mean, you know, we are a startup. Typically, startups go to VCs to raise funding, but it's not in their interest to increase access to justice, because a lot of their institutional investors will find themselves on the firing line of our platform. Our view is don't break the law. But we are trying to find alternative ways to fund this platform from various impact investors, philanthropists, charities. We're looking at all options. Great. All right. Well, thank you both very much for giving us a demonstration today. I know there's been much excitement in the chat, so please do check that out. I think there'll be a couple of really interesting partners in there. Now for something kind of completely different. We've talked a lot in this group about how to make online information and services accessible to users. And I'm really pleased to welcome Chris Hind from Recite Me, who's going to give us a demonstration of their tool, which helps information online be more accessible. So Chris, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Martha, and thank you for the invitation today. Really appreciate you all taking some time to learn a little bit more about Recite Me and digital inclusion. And as Martha said, Recite Me as an organization, we are a tech company, and we are singly focused on improving the inclusion in the online world. And what we mean by that is just making anything that's online, whether that's websites, online platforms, portals, applicant tracking systems, anything that's online, we just want to make it more inclusive for those who have additional needs. Now, it's quite a broad church of those who do have additional needs online. It represents around about 20% of the population. And that can be anything from those with forms of neurodiversity, dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, Asperger's, ADD, ADHD, through to physical disabilities like visual impairments, low-level visual impairments, could be reading, learning, cognitive challenges, age-related difficulties. Like I say, it's very, very broad in terms of those who have additional needs, who don't currently have access online and just need a little bit of assistance. So that's where Recite Me comes in. That's what we are looking to help. And to help assist with this issue, I'm just going to share my screen now so everyone can take a look at what I'm doing. Recite Me as a technology, you will see this when I click this button. Recite Me is basically this toolbar. So it's a plugin for any website, as I mentioned, any web-based system, and simply plugs in. No other digital accommodations you've got to make for it, so you don't need to make any kind of large changes to the back-end code of your website or platform, very much plug and play. And the reason this technology is here is because those with additional needs, whether that is disabilities, forms of neurodiversity, whatever it might be, everyone has a very individual, unique lived experience of that particular additional need. So for example, I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was quite young. It's quite an acute form of dyslexia. Our CEO here at Recite Me also has dyslexia, why this organization was started. But although myself and Ross have the same condition, we experience it in very different ways. And because of that, we need different tools and different assistance when it comes to the online world. And that's a reflection of the broader problem, is that every single person who has additional needs online is going to have very individual, unique experience of that and what those additional needs are. So because of that, that's what Recite Me is all about. We want to provide the broadest range of tools possible, the greatest levels of customization, control, and just hand that over to end users as a toolkit and say, look, it's not us assuming what your needs are or being prescriptive. It's about us giving you a toolkit and you taking what you need from that toolkit to adjust websites or online platforms in a way that works for you so you can consume them in an effective way. Now, given what we're here to talk about today, those with disabilities, forms of neurodiversity and other additional needs are disproportionately affected by legal issues, and their access to recourse can be disproportionately affected by their inability to engage online. So just to give you a bit of a kind of a run through of the technology and how it works. I mean, you may have just seen me click this accessibility tools button on our website to launch the toolbar. If you were to adopt Recite Me to your website or platform, that launch button itself is entirely customizable. So you can place it anywhere you want, you can design it any way you like, word it any way you want. Just to give you a couple of examples, flip the family law and partnership. They've got this nice accessibility button, sits in the top corner there, as you can see, nicely styled up with the rest of their website. Lindsay's law firm, again, nice and in keeping with their brands. They've got an accessibility button there. Linklaters, we really like theirs. The wording accessibility tools is actually just really good signposting to end users to, hey, when you click on this button, you're actually going to get some tools to help you with your accessibility issues. It's not just going to be a statement in that sense. So yeah, end user will arrive on a platform, they'll click a button, they get launched the toolbar. The toolbar is uniformed across all adoptions. So we currently have 4,500 plus organizations that have adopted Recite Me. So an end user's experience will be the same when they go to each one of these sites. So I'll dive in, I'll give you a quick look at how the technology works. So the first thing I'll show you is our screen reader. We know from our analytics, screen reading, listening to content instead of reading it is a really effective way for a lot of people to consume the content. So because of that reason that a lot of people use it, there's nothing the end user needs to do to get the screen reader working. They literally point at some content.
Recite Me believes in accessibility for all, allowing everyone the opportunity to use the internet in the way that it is intended. This stream started in the late 90s when Recite...
I'll just stop that audio playback, but you can get a sense of what the screen reader sounds like and how it works. You'll see the little pop-up box here. You can fast forward and rewind the audio. You can play and stop it. To listen to the next paragraph or instance of text, you could just point at it.
Provided with personal assistant.
So you can point at it, or you can use the green buttons here, as you'll see, to move between next and previous instances of text. The screen reader very deliberately only reads one instance or one paragraph at a time and then stops. And it's just so that end user can consume that content at a speed or pace that's comfortable for their individual needs. But coming back to the idea, the more granular the control, the more customizable it is, the more personalization available, the more people we can serve exactly what they need. In our settings cog here, you can actually customize that screen reader. So you can do things like increase or decrease how quickly that audio is played back to me as an end user. I can switch between male and female voices, not just for gender equality, but also there are some people with hearing impairments whereby a higher or lower frequency of voice becomes easier to hear. And if you don't want to manually kind of point at each bit of content you want to read, we do have a continuous play option there that will actually just read the whole page of content for the end user without stopping. I will, for the purposes of the demonstration, leave my screen reader entirely turned off. The toolbar does remember the user's preferences. So once they've arrived on your website and they've got it set up how they need to, anytime they return to your site in the future, the toolbar will launch and their preferences will be set up and ready to go. So just really nice and simple in terms of that continuity of experience. For those with visual impairments, age-related visual difficulties, it might be that you need to increase the text to be able to read it. So very simply, you click these buttons, you'll see here the text on screen is now increasing. Not just small, medium, and large text options like you might get from some browsers or sites, but incrementally is big or as small as that end user needs it to be able to visually engage. And when we do change the text size, that's all HTML text through the site will uniformly change to that size. We can change the fonts, so different forms of neurodiversity, particularly different fonts can have a huge impact for their ability to visually engage and read that text on screen. So for me, I will use this Open Dyslexic font. You'll see here when I've changed the font, it's every bit of text, HTML text through the site, right the way to your footers is in that new font format. And again, that persists right the way through the website now as well. Small adjustments. I mean, one way that my dyslexia manifests, and this is similar for a lot of people with things like dyspraxia, ADD, ADHD, autism, we get what's called line follow difficulty. So reading to the end of a line and then visually accurately picking up the second line instead of I generally tend to read the same line 2 or 3 times, or visually I'll skip ahead a few lines. So what we can actually do is increase the line height. So you'll see here when I do this, that the lines of text actually are now further apart and much easier to visually track from line to line. Next up, we've got some, I'll just put that back to our standard line height there. Next up, we've got some coloring options. So much like fonts, colors can just have a huge impact for people's ability to visually engage with a site. So we have 20 pre-designed color combinations that we know help the majority of users. For my dyslexia, I like a gray background with black text. For those with visual impairments, it's usually high contrast, yellow and black, or black and yellow. For those with sensory conditions, things like autism, it might be that you need a low sensory or low contrast option. There's options there for autism, there's options there for color blindness, but again, everyone's so unique in terms of their needs. We do have a select your own option. So if you don't fall into one of these presets, you say, okay, I want to customize my background color. I'm going to choose any color from this color wheel that's here. Once I've got a color that works, okay, I need a blue background, but that's a little bit dark for me. You just click around in this box to get the exact hue or tone of that color. Not just for the background, we can also change the color of text on screen if we want. We can change the color of links if we need to. Links are just sometimes difficult for people with color blindness. A link might be in a certain color format that doesn't stand out for individual end users with color blindness, and it is about 1 in 10 that have color blindness effectiveness disorder. Next up, we've got a couple of tools we designed just to replicate mechanisms, strategies, tools that people use out in the real world. We want to replicate them online, make it nice and simple, nice and familiar for people. So primarily, we have a line follow ruler. So a lot of people will already use a bookmark, a folded bit of paper, or whatever it might be, just to line follow text to make it visually easier for them to engage and consume that content. The line follow ruler just tracks up and down with your mouse. You can change the color of the ruler if you want to, just by going to color options, and we can brighten that up if we need to make it more impactful for your visual range. We've got a magnifying tool. Again, a lot of people with visual impairments will carry an optic and magnification glass. So whether it's improving the size of pictorial content or text, just a simple, familiar way for people with visual impairments to do that. We've got a masking tool. So for people with sensory conditions, they may experience what they call sensory noise. So it can be carousel content, it could be scrolling text, it could be a picture, it could be a type of color or imagery, whatever it might be. It's so visually distracting, it means you can't concentrate on other areas of the site. So for those end users, we have a masking tool. So again, you move it up and down with your cursor, and it just blocks out visual noise and allows you to concentrate on exactly the content you're trying to read or consume at that time. And much like the ruler, you can change the colors if you need to. We have a couple of language options. So for those who require a dictionary, you can double click a word or highlight a word. We'll get a dictionary definition. We'll get some synonyms for you on there as well. That box will work with everything else, the screen reader, the increased text size, color changes, etc. But dictionaries are great for people with dyslexia, reading, learning, cognitive challenges, those who speak English as a second language. Speaking of those who do speak English as a second language, we do provide language translation support. So all in all, we have 140 international languages. Very simply, I don't know, there's French, for example. We'll click a language. The website, all HTML text will now be in French for an end user, right the way to your footers there, as you'll see. Our toolbar now reflects that language. So any text pop-ups, our drop-down menus are all now in French. If we were to turn our screen reader on, we're using any of the languages that have these audio icons, we can actually screen read in people's native language as well.
Recité me croit en l'accessibilité pour tous, permettant à tout le monde d'utiliser un...
Again, we don't have to listen to the entire paragraph in French, but give you a quick idea of that. And really, it's because we need to be able to support people who speak English as a second language and have additional needs, forms of neurodiversity, disability as well. We've got a beautifully diverse country in terms of language spoken, nationality, so we need to be able to support people who have language needs and additional disability or neurodiversity requirements as well. Last but not least, our last two options here, we've got a simplify mode. Again, for people with sensory conditions, people maybe have cognitive difficulties, this will strip out all of the design content of the site. But as you'll see, it leaves end users with everything they need to consume the content of that site and navigate through that site. So Your search boxes still work, your links still work to navigate, but you'll see all of the content just really easy to view, really easy to read. And for those with visual impairments, some may have a reduced visual field, so they can only see a small central part of their visual field. For those end users, we can squash the content down into a centralized column there, so they've still got the ability to read and consume that content in a way that works for them. And the very last button there we've got, it just allows end users to make an audio book or an audio file out of any of the content on the site. So what they'll do is they'll highlight what they want to take away, they'll hit that download button, and it creates an unprotected MP3 file that will sit on that machine. They can just listen to that content as many times as they want to offline, re-engage with it as many times they need to, share it between devices or people as and when they need to. So that's kind of the full toolbar. The last button on the end there is just our user guide, just in case someone's using this for the first time and they need to understand a little bit deeper what each of the buttons do and how the toolbar works. Last thing to say, end users can use the toolbar on a desktop, laptop, mobile or tablet when they visit a website. Doesn't matter if it's Apple, Android, Windows or Linux. Any browser, any device, people can use Recite Me on it. And we now do PDF inclusion as well. So if you have PDFs on your site and someone's using the toolbar, they'll actually get an inclusion toolbar for that PDF content. That is the long and short of it there. I appreciate your time. I know it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour and a lot to take in. Apologies, I do have to jump off at 11 o'clock, but I'll quickly take any questions. And what I'll do is I'll quickly put my email just in the chat box now. So if anyone does have any questions or wants to explore an adoption of Recite Me further in the future, please just feel free to reach out to me by email anytime. So my email address, very simple, in the chat there is just chris@reciteme.com. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate that.
Chris, thank you so much. What an amazing kind of one-stop shop opportunity to tick off so many of the issues that I know we experience across the sector. Thank you for sharing everything in the chat box as well. I'm sure lots of people will be in touch, and thanks for your time today.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chris. Moving on then. We have touched on automation in access to justice, and we've explored the use of chatbots and other forms of automated decision trees. So I'm delighted to welcome Raj Panesar, founder of Law Fairy, whose tool demonstrates this, but also the benefits of sharing law tech development with the access to justice sector. And what impact that can have. So I'm just going to switch over here, Raj, and here.
Thank you very, very much, Martha. So this has been fantastic. I thought I'd be just giving, but I've been receiving so much in terms of technological progress. So thank you very, very much, Martha, for putting such a fantastic set together. So let me just give you a brief introduction about myself first, because I think it'll give you context into what we're doing at Law Fairy. So I have been a lawyer for over 26 years, and for 14 of those years, I was a partner. I was a partner at Cleary Gottlieb, and I was a partner at Hogan Lovells. I was a corporate partner, and I also was the head of pro bono, and I got heavily involved in diversity work as well. And one other perhaps unusual skill that I had was that I could also code. And the reason I'm telling you this is that it's a combination of all of this that's really brought me to create Law Fairy. And so Law Fairy was born out of a frustration that in the legal industry, including in the corporate legal industry, there weren't products that would really do 100% of the work that we wanted to give to our clients. And a big reason for that was because you had the technologists on one side and you had the corporate lawyers or the subject matter experts on this side. And the corporate lawyers would say, look, this is what we need. They'd go off to the technologists, and then they would create something that perhaps got you 20% of the way, but nothing that got you all of the way to producing something. So when I got the last demo from a tech company that said that it wasn't possible, I went home, spoke to my wife, who's been extremely supportive, and said, look, I think I can do this. What do you think? So within a month, I'd resigned my partnership at Hogan Lovells, and I'd set up Law Fairy. And the progress has been superb. We've got, the strategy is to have a corporate section of the website and a pro bono section of the website. And the ethos is profit with purpose. So the corporate side works with corporate law firms and uses that to fund the automation of tools in the pro bono sector. So let me show you how this works. You can see my screen, I take it.
Can do, yes.
Awesome. Okay, so let me just show you very quickly the corporate side of this, because that is where the technology has been repurposed for pro bono purposes, and it'll give you a real indication of the power of the technology. So you answer a lot of questions, and the demo that I got before I established this was essentially 4 questions that took about 10% of the work away from the creation of a complicated legal agreement. And so this is for an IPO, and it goes through all of the questions that a partner would need to discuss with an associate before the associate went off to draft an underwriting agreement. And the underwriting agreement would take about 2 weeks to draft. About 70+ hours it would take to draft this in a form that could be sent to the client. And so what this does is it asks all of those questions, sucks that in to the database, and then what it does is it produces a beautiful summary of that whole deal. So it's basically taken all of that information, it's summarized it, and even the summary would probably be a good day of work to produce. Right, so then it's not just the summary that this is there to do. This will draft this agreement. I'll push the button now. This would take 70 hours of manual time, but it's going to draft it in less than 11 seconds. And the quality of what it produces is better than one that in 26 years I ever managed to send to a client as a first draft. So, you know, it's all well and good creating this sort of technology, but if my view is if we don't try and repurpose this sort of technology for the benefit of society, I think we're really losing a great opportunity to bring society forward. So what this does is it does repurpose that technology. And so you saw the first corporate product is an underwriting agreement. The first pro bono product is a housing application, for which there is a great need. It's very complicated. We used to do a lot of work in legal clinics, and the time that it would take to produce a housing application with the real complexity of cases that we were coming across in the legal clinics was immense. And, you know, sometimes it would just be a day's work to draft a housing application. So, you know, volunteers' time it just wasn't being used in a way that was maximally efficient. So this is what's given rise to this first tool. So you go through the questions, and it's much like, again, you can see it's using the same technology that we've done for the corporate side. You set out the details of the members of the household for which you want to get housing. So the contact name is, then you've got to deal with the relationships between each of those members of the household. And you can see as you go along, there are fewer questions being asked about relationships, because the more information you give the platform, the more it can infer. So it's not asking redundant questions. Now, an application can be very complex, and there can be people with accessibility issues. And so you can set out, you can add, you can remove. So you give details of each of the physical accessibility issues that apply for each person. Is there anybody who has a learning disability? So you can go through that and set those out. Anyone with a physical health condition? Anyone suffering from mental health conditions? Is anybody pregnant? So you can see it's only asking about Melanie there. So it's looked at the members of the household to determine who could be pregnant and only asked about that. So again, the technology is not, it's trying very hard not to ask redundant questions. It's complicated enough. So if you're going to make a good case in the housing application, it would be good to understand what all of the priority needs are. And to understand the priority needs, it'd be good to understand what sort of complications there are with a pregnancy. So it gives you options. You can add other and put that in, type it in if you need to. Is anybody suffering, does anybody have any safeguarding issues? So let's say Harry Kane has got safeguarding issues. So you've got 2 safeguarding issues. Then it takes you through the perpetrators, who the perpetrators of each one are. So there are, you can add and subtract and set out whether there are any protection orders, when do they expire. Anyone being in social care is also a relevant question for housing. When did they leave? How many times? What sort of care were they in? Can we get letters to support the application? Anybody been in the army? Whether they served in any wars. So here, there's an example of the way the technology works. It's looked at the dates that somebody came into the army, left the army, worked out what wars were going on there, and is only asking you about the wars that they might have served in. So again, it's all about removing redundancy. It's gone through and worked out what all of Harry's health issues were and given those as options for advocacy to write how the current housing situation is exacerbating those conditions. Has anybody spent time in prison? So you go through the criminal justice history. Anybody got a history of rough sleeping? Anybody would be made more vulnerable because of their age if housing wasn't provided? Then you work out what the dependencies are. Who lives full time in the household? So you could have the groups broken up into different, they might not be living together at the moment, but they might want to be living together. So this allows you to put in each of the group's housing situation. So let's just, for this purpose, assume that they're all living together in their own house or flat. And let's see if we're worried that it's going to be repossessed. So now you go through and ask all the questions about the mortgage situation. So affordability, are there any intentional homelessness issues? Do we believe the home is overcrowded? Is there anyone else living there other than, so let's say, oh, that's the first, that's the surname, sorry. Then let's put them in their bedrooms. We need to set out what the relationships are because that's relevant. If anybody's been involved in working out overcrowding, it's extremely complicated. You need to know a lot of information. Let's say it's a small room. Any health risks that are being posed by the actual housing itself? Is it exacerbating any health issues? And there's often more than one reason why somebody's got a threat of homelessness. So you can add, you can subtract. Anyone changed the locks? When were they changed? Anybody been asked to leave? Other homes in England are relevant. Other homes outside of England are relevant. So you've got all of this information, and the job of Law Fairy now is to suck all of that information in and summarize it. So it has done exactly that. And again, you can see how it's using the technology that we developed for the corporate one. If you just have a look at this, this is essentially sets out the housing situation, just summarizes it. Can you see that well enough?
I can, yes. Thanks, Raj.
I can assure you this is not easy to write when you've got so many different ways of the information. So the permutations of the information, the permutation count for this is bigger than the number of atoms in the universe. So to be able to deal with such permutation count and write something as clearly as this is really, really difficult. Now, I told you that the overcrowding is very difficult to analyze. If you have a look at that, it's analyzed it, summarized it, and come to a conclusion. And it's dealt with this taking into account the age of the people, the relationships between the people, the size of the rooms. It's worked out, it's taken into account relevant rooms. So the council could say, well, actually, you've got a living room that people could sleep in. So you might have to shove people off into the living room. It's taken all of that into account. It's done the calculation not just on the the room standard, which is one of the standards the council requires, but also the space standard. And what it's done is it's looked at all of that information and see if you could shuffle it around in all sorts of different ways, in all of the possible ways, to see if it could actually solve the overcrowding problem. So it summarizes all of this. All of the safeguarding issues, the care history, the military service history, writes that beautifully. But wouldn't it be good if it could actually also write a beautiful letter to the council? Oh. Oh, I've done it too small, that's why. So I hit this button, and what it's done now is it's written the letter to the council. And it's done that, it's referred to all the relevant pieces of law, added in the advocacy. And I think this is like a 7 or 8 page letter that it's drafted. And one of the beauties of this is that it gives all the council all of the information it needs in one go, rather than having the back and forth. It reduces the back and forth. Not only does it help the person who needs the housing, it's actually helping councils be more efficient. So that is Law Fairy.
Raj, that's a complete tour de force. How amazing. You can see just, you know, how clever and how, you know, consistent and full that is, and it's obviously kind of amazingly kind of high quality and detailed offering that we've got, and it was really good to hear as well you talk about the duty of kind of law tech to also offer this kind of this learning and this offering development to the access to justice sector, which I completely agree with, and it's obviously done an amazing job here. Just quickly before we move on then, who can we be getting involved with this? What is your ask of the sector? Do you need people to pilot it and test it? What are the next steps?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Martha. So I've got three law firms, three international law firms who are on board on the corporate side. One of those has sponsored the next product on the pro bono side, which is going to be an immigration product, and we're currently working on building that. I funded all this myself, so this has not got any investment from anybody other than me. And the idea is to build this out on the corporate side so it funds the pro bono side. I've got two charities who are super, super keen to use this. One of them's a charity in the legal clinic space, and the other one is in the refugee space. So I want support. I definitely want support. Support will go a long way to bringing this out into the market. I've been pretty coy about it so far. I haven't trumpeted this. I've not gone out to the press or anything like that. So I'd be interested in coverage. I will ultimately be looking to work and collaborate with more charities. And if I can collaborate with charities who are already in bed with law firms who want to use it on the corporate side, that's a really good way of creating the sustainability cycle that I see for lawfaring. So it's in a fantastic place, but we only established this, not just over a year ago. So we built all of this in just over a year. The potential for this, I really do believe it is game changing for so many of the areas that really need access to justice. So I think one of the things I really want people to do is to think about the application of this and how we can push this out into the market to really maximize the impact.
Absolutely, yeah, and anything this group can do to help that, we absolutely will. I know we've got some amazing feedback in the comments, so do go and check those out. I know there are a couple of other questions too, but I think if it's support you're looking for, this is a great source for it. So Raj, thank you so much for your presentation today, and we'll make sure to keep on coming back to this and seeing how we can continue to support. Finally, to round us off, I'm really pleased to welcome Guy Stern, whose legal connection tool has been something we've been aware of since its very early development. And we're really pleased to see how far it's come and how it's currently being used by the community. So Guy, over to you.
Hey everyone, I'm Guy Stern. I'm the co-founder of Legal Connection. So I am not a lawyer. My background is in computer science. And a few years ago, I was dealing with a law firm, and I found the experience to be less than, thrilling. Part of my issue when I was dealing with the law firm was around communication. I found that if I was working with 2 or 3 lawyers, I'd be sending documents to one lawyer, and then the next lawyer would ask me for those same documents. So I'd answer a question that one lawyer had asked me, only to find another lawyer asking me the same question. When I phoned up the law firm, to speak to one of the lawyers, I couldn't get through to them necessarily because they were busy, and they asked me to set up an appointment. And what I landed up doing was standing outside the law firm, waiting for them to come down for their cigarette breaks so that I could find out what was going on with my case. So I dreamed of building a product that looked a little bit like WhatsApp, like a WhatsApp for law, in which me and my few lawyers were all kind of working together in a space where I could, share the files with them once, where they could all see what was going on in the conversation. And so that's what I built. The product's called Legal Connection. I'll show you in a minute what it's used for in the pro bono space, but I'll first sort of give you a demo of the product itself. So this is Legal Connection. It is a communication and collaboration platform for lawyers. And so let's say this is me now, and I'm a lawyer, and this is my client, and I am helping her on a matter. And these are another couple of lawyers. Maybe they work in my law firm, maybe they don't. The point is we're all working on this case. So now we can all use this chat area to communicate, to share documents, to ask questions and answer questions and so on. And all the documents that we share in this chat and any other documents will live under the Files tab, and they can be grouped into folders and deleted and added and edited and so on right here. And then there's a Tasks tab where we can sort of agree on, what's going to happen next and who's going to do it. So, maybe this drafting of the affidavit, I'm going to give this to Zarlash, and maybe this over here I'm going to give to myself, and I'm going to put a deadline on this task and a deadline on this task, and so on. So, the product was inspired by WhatsApp. Sometimes we call it the WhatsApp of law. But one of the first questions people will ask me is, well, why not just use WhatsApp? What's different about Legal Connection is, one of the differences is, if I want to add someone to this matter now, I can click and invite them, add their details, and once I've added their details, they'll be added to the matter. Their face will appear over here, and they'll have access to the entire chat history. So they'll be able to sort of read the chat history, quickly review the files, and then say, I'm up to date. And they can then continue and help with the case. So this is kind of the product that we built. Initially, the idea was to sell it into sort of corporate law firms, but life is very interesting, and we entered something called the Global Legal Hackathon, and then the Hill Innovating Justice Challenge in 2018. And in 2019, we went through Access to Justice Accelerator, and we learned about community paralegals, firstly in South Africa, where I come from. This is just a little video about one of our first projects we ever found. So this is Asasiti. She's a community paralegal in South Africa, in a very rural neighborhood. She is the port of call for everyone who's got a legal problem. Even though she doesn't have much legal knowledge, she will sit and consult with these clients and offer them some level of legal support. So here you go, she's sitting and chatting to a client. This client, you can see she's got a candy bar phone, so she's not going to be accessing Legal Connection herself, but she's handing over all these documents to Asasiti, and Asasiti is going to upload all these documents into Legal Connection, and then click and invite members of her pro bono network who can help her with the case. And so this project was launched in 2019. I'll quickly open our pitch deck because I want to just show you a little bit more. This is an investor pitch deck, but we go through some of the concepts here. So we've got community paralegals who are on the front line in the fight for access to justice. These community paralegals are supported by networks of pro bono lawyers. The pro bono lawyers set aside time to work on pro bono consultations. And what we found the problem is that it was relatively uncoordinated. You've got consulting in person and through video calls. It can be difficult to sort of keep track of all the different cases that were flowing through this network. Under-resourced, you have a lot of lawyers and not a lot of, too many cases and not enough lawyers to help. And there's an issue around funding within access to justice. And so our solution was to have this asynchronous communication tool where pro bono lawyers and paralegals can work on large numbers of cases in parallel to increase their efficiency. And I hope I'm not losing anyone, but you can ask questions at the end. So how it works is as follows. These cases would come in through a law clinic or something like that, and they would find their way into a law firm, for example. The law firm would then look at the cases and assign them to members of the law firm. So if you're a pro bono manager at a law firm, you've got 50 lawyers, you could sort of click and assign different cases to different lawyers. Once that's happened, the communication piece kicks in. So through secure matter chat rooms, the pro bono lawyers and the paralegals and the volunteers and sometimes clients work together in this collaborative space, and you've got access control and chat history and all these features that we've built in this secure chat area. Access control is super important. I'll just show you quickly in the product how it works. Let's say Zarlash is, she's doing an internship and she's running off her Gmail. And let's say Charlotte Miller works in one law firm and I work in another law firm. I might be in our Outlook, she might be in her Outlook, and she might be in her Gmail. And if our client now wants to delete this matter, from a GDPR perspective, I'd need to contact all these three people and ask them to delete every single piece of communication related to the matter. With Legal Connection, I can simply click on the matter and say, look, I want to remove Zarlash because her internship's over, or I want to, delete the entire matter, in which case it's gone completely. So, that's the value proposition around this communication piece. Then we've got the document management piece, the fact that the files can be uploaded and, searched through. Structured metadata is something we built around the needs of these pro bono projects. Sometimes they wanted to know a little bit more about the case. So if it's an asylum seeker, you might want to know certain fields like, what country did they come from and what visa are they on, and, all sorts of fields. So we built a custom intake form builder with API integrations with web forms and the ability to export to CSV. So if, for example, you're working with 2,000 refugees and you'd like to know, which refugees coming from the following country with the following issues, are working in the following way, or how long did the case take for the following subset. So you can really pull out, very important information and use that to generate analytics and reports. Billing and accounts, not something you typically think of when you were looking at pro bono, but we spoke to a lot of lawyers, and I continue to speak to lawyers in the UK who work in, for example, the immigration space. They might take on a lot of pro bono cases, but they're not necessarily doing them for free. So in some instances, I've chatted to lawyers who are working on cases where the client won't be paying, but some third party, such as a charity, might be paying. And so, they need to keep perfect records of how much they're charging and how many hours of work they've done, and be able to pass that off to the people who are footing the bill. And then the theory of change, very quickly, the idea of working asynchronously, sort of a WhatsApp style way of working rather than video calls and meetings. The idea is that lawyers can flip through lots of matters, observing and discussing, asking and answering questions and offering advice. Working in this way, the lawyers can increase their overall impact. And then by working asynchronously, the lawyers can also leverage their professional networks to invite subject matters to join in on cases. And that's what I showed you over here. I'm a lawyer, and now I think we need to invite a subject matter expert. I can click and invite them, and they can help out. So that's one of the benefits of using the product. The other benefit is around public interest litigation. You can run these cases one by one, which is great. But when you've got thousands or sometimes millions of people who need help, what you want to do is help at the advocacy level. So with the metadata captured on a case-by-case basis, we can identify and track trends over time, generate reports which can be shared with public interest law firms who can take action on behalf of a bigger amount of people. And I'll show you how that happened in a moment. And then finally, increased funding. One of the things we noticed in South Africa, for example, is that there's relatively low funding, and often there's a hesitancy by donors to fund because they can't see what's happening. So when you use Zoom calls and WhatsApp chats and email, it can be difficult to properly record what's happening in these cases and measure impact. And so using Legal Connection, although the information remains private, aggregate user engagement in the case metadata can be captured and stored and shared with donor organizations to motivate for additional funding. So those are kind of the big three things that we think, how we can put a dent into access to justice in general with the product. And then the case studies, this is the first case study, the one that I just showed you. There's 500,000 kids in South Africa who lack birth certificates. And there's been a project to sort of help these families one by one. And that's what our product was used for. This consultation you can see here. ICCT is talking to someone who's got a family member who doesn't have a birth certificate. They managed to help, say, 150 people using the platform, but then they were able to take that data and unlock services for 7,000 people. And they think that they can go on to help 2 million people because they're suing government and unlocking services. Another case study, this one is in France. Safe Passage France helps Afghanistani refugees. They were working with 50 lawyers across 12 different law firms, and they were doing everything over email, which was making it difficult for them to track where these cases were going. Earlier this year, they implemented Legal Connection. Now all 12 of the law firms that they work with use Legal Connection to sort of run these matters, to store the sensitive data, and Safe Passage is able to see everything that's happening, across all the matters that they've referred to these 12 law firms. And then finally, this is the one that excited me the most because this is the one where the clients and the lawyers are actually sort of chatting together. So DLA Piper started a project to help Ukrainian refugees that are arriving in the UK. To begin with, they were using a product called HiQ, which some of you may have used, which is a sort of traditional case management / CRM tool. And then they were maintaining communication with these refugees over email. But when you've got 2,000 refugees across 4 different law firms, because they were partnering with 3 other firms and you've got multiple lawyers working, everyone's inundated with emails. People were forgetting to update CRM. And so using our solution, which I'll sort of demonstrate to you in a moment, that we actually created a web form on a public website where people could fill in the form. And once they filled in a form, it would go to DLA Piper. Someone there would actually, there was 4 law firms working on it, and any one of those, the admins from those 4 law firms could pick a matter off the top of the list, assign it to one of their team, pick a matter off the top of the list, assign it to one of their team, and then once it was assigned, the refugees and their lawyers could sort of chat in these secure chat rooms. And this is now live. It's been live. Advice Ukraine. It's this over here. And how it works is as follows. I'm a Ukrainian refugee. I come to this website. I'll just sort of type in my name. I'll put in my date of birth. I'll say whether it's just me traveling or me and my family. And if it's my family, I can choose which family members. Whether I've got a visa or I don't have. If I've got a visa, which type of visa do I have next? And my living situation next. Anything else. And then what this does is it populates a matter over in Legal Connection. I won't go all the way to the end, but yeah, right. If you go right to the end, it posts this matter on Legal Connection. You get connected to a lawyer over in Legal Connection, and you continue your discussion over there. And the one little piece that I'll show you is the following. You can actually set up these projects really easily from within Legal Connection. So I can create a group. Let's say I call this the Ukrainian refugee group, and I'll say this is a non-commercial access to justice project. Once I've created this, I can go and say what fields do I want to capture for these refugees. So I can go here to custom content types, and I create my content type called refugee, and it's a matter type. You can also create client types. And then I can say, okay, I need to know what country they were coming in from, of origin. And this is a text field. And maybe I need to know their date of birth. So I'll ask for date of birth. And that's a date field. Now maybe I want to ask a question like visa type. So I might say visa type. And this is going to be a select list. I want them to select from a number of options. And this, gosh, I don't know visas. I'm just going to say work visa, and yeah, there are other visa, whatever it is. And I can add all these fields. And then on the matter intake form, so there's 2 ways of creating a matter. One is through this sort of, you build your own web form and you link to us through an API. And the other way is just, I'm on the phone and someone's called in, and within my Ukrainian refugee group, I'm going to be setting up this matter. So there it's going to ask me my date of birth, my work type, and my country of origin, because these are the 3 fields that I've set up for my group. And so, yeah, that's Legal Connection. Essentially, we have managed to now, mostly thanks to that one project with Safe Passage, we're now, we have lawyers from all of these different law firms that are using the product. We are still a baby startup with very little money, but huge aspirations for doing great things within legal tech and access to justice. So right now we're looking for more people who would like to use a platform like this. I saw a lot of demos today of systems that sort of help on the front end of things. But where we really focus is what happens once a client needs to be connected to a lawyer, or what happens once a case becomes slightly more complicated and you need 2 or 3 lawyers working on it, and you don't want to use traditional reply all email chains, and you don't want to use video calling, and you want to track lots and lots of cases at the same time in an online space in a secure way, which is GDPR compliant. I think that's where we shine. And yeah, I'd love to, hear from anyone who would like to have a slightly longer demo and maybe chat about any projects. We charge for the product in different ways. Obviously, we charge DLA Piper a lot of money because they're a big law firm. But if you don't have a lot of money, or if you don't have any money, we still want to chat to you, because what's important for us is building these these various use cases. We're also, we apply for grants, we try to get money out of impact investors, although we're not maybe as successful as some of the other speakers. But yeah, that's a bit about us. I will drop my email address in the chat, and if there's any other questions, then I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guy. I know we're running slightly over, but just a couple of things I really wanted to highlight from that presentation before we drop off, and that's the potential of getting pro bono services directly into frontline settings, utilizing some of these community paralegals or advice champions or community groups. We know that's a really hot topic. There's also something there about coordinating pro bono projects across different firms to focus on a single issue or single crisis event, which I also think has been really relevant recently in a number of different situations. And yeah, as you said, the functionality of the technology itself as well looks brilliant.